All right, I am very, very happy to welcome Aiko Hemingway to the Sasaga podcast. And I'm excited because I've been waiting for this day. Aiko's interviewed me a few times, and now it's my turn to interview Aiko. So maybe you could start by telling us, Aiko, a little bit about who you are and what sort of communicator you want to be.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much for having me. So hi everyone. I'm Aiko Hemingway, and I am right now as an American English pronunciation coach, and I'm actually a business coach too, and based in Hawaii. And yeah, so I do a lot of things. So so being a coach, and I have a YouTube channel, and I have a podcast show, and also I'm a Toastmaster. I do a lot of things, and one thing quickly is that I was born and raised in Japan and moved to the US when I was 23, and I didn't really speak English that time. So through my experience, I learned accent reduction lessons, and I learned the phonetics and linguistics and stuff, and took some singing lessons. So now this is why I'm teaching pronunciation to Japanese clients in the US. So yeah, so that's what I do.
Okay, and it's so amazing for me because you speak so beautifully. You learn a way to pronounce effectively, and also how to teach people how to correct their pronunciation. So I think that's amazing. And that, we can talk about this maybe later on as well, but my pronunciation has changed over the years because I had a very strong accent when I where I grew up and things like that, but nobody understood me. So I wanted to ask you, what sort of communicator do you want to be?
Oh yeah. So I want to be open to new ideas. Like as a communicator, it's important to be able to work with other people, right? So I'm in Toastmasters now, and I'm being a leader in the group right now. And what I'm learning is, I want to be open to new ideas. I want to learn how to initiate the things that we should do to improve our clubs, stuff like that. And yeah, so just I want to be open to new ideas. So that would be the communication style that I want to have.
Mm-hmm. And for an open communication style, what does that mean to you? Like, what specifically do you focus on doing to be open in your communication?
Yeah, so if you're in an organization, you can see like some of the things are already established. So, we were doing the same thing over and over. And, to be able to be flexible in this society, because we're moving so fast to the next technology and stuff, I think it's important for us to be flexible.
Mm-hmm.
And adapt like new ideas quickly. So that's something that came to me when I listened to your question, like how, what kind of communication skill I want to get.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, and totally. Now we have such a kind of, global environment. It's so easy to communicate with people from different backgrounds. So being open and learning from their ways of thinking, their ideas I love that.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
in your career, I know you've been tremendously successful. You're doing lots of great things. Could you give us one example of a communication success that you've enjoyed?
Yeah, communication success would be, I love initiating. By the way, in Toastmasters, we discover our own communication style. There is actually a worksheet that you can work on, and I found out that my communication style is initiating. So initiating, bad stuff about initiating is that I like to talk more than listening, so I need to work on that one. But I am good at like initiating things. Like I get new ideas and oh, I like the new idea, so let's do that. And I try it the next day. So that's like I have been liking. And so one communication success would be I like to try out harder stuff when I learn something new. So I was able to become club president in my club, and the reason why I got the position is that I said I want to do it. So that's it, and I was the only one who wanted to be the club president. So that would be something that I really liked, but that doesn't mean I am a like I'm an amazing leader or I am an amazing communicator or something like that, right? So I am learning a lot, but to be able to get those type of opportunities, I need to initiate. So yeah, that would be the story. Recent story.
Right. So in communication, it's about kind of like speaking up and stepping out of your comfort zone, that kind of thing.
Yeah, stepping out of my comfort zone. That is something that I was scared of doing for a long time. But I changed my mindset that if I stay in this environment and doing the same thing over and over, I'm not gonna change. And I got tired of just being shy and not being able to progress in my life, and I just decided to step out of my comfort zone whenever I have opportunities like this, being interviewed on a podcast show makes me scared, but this is something that I'm trying to do.
Right. Now, can you remember what the trigger was that made you change from being kind of scared to step out of your comfort zone to stepping out? And I'm asking this because, a lot of people who are listening or maybe watching the video version of this, a lot of the women in particular, and, I work a lot with Japanese women who are very, and it's not just Japanese women, by the way, it's just, that's the environment that I'm in. They're very concerned about what people around think, and so don't want to take that risk of stepping out of the comfort zone, speaking up. So I'm just wondering what the trigger was for you and if that can help them.
Yeah, so so around 3 years ago, my husband got injured his back, and that's when we were moving. We were moving from Vancouver, Canada to Hawaii. So that was 3 years ago. And we moved a lot of furniture, and along the way, he injured his back. And he stayed in bed for like 2 weeks. That made me think that, I need to change. Like, life is so short. Sorry, I get really emotional about it, but life is so short, and there's so many things that I want to do. Sorry, it's really emotional because this experience changed my life so much. Sorry.
Oh, it's great, and thank you for sharing this, because it's often when you get that kind of something that's a real trigger and it's a real emotional experience, and it's when you go through that then gives you that the kind of the trigger, the courage to do something different. So you had this experience where he had injured his back, and that made you think differently.
Yeah, so after that, I really appreciate like everyday life. And so just 3 months after that, I decided to join Toastmasters, which I got to know about Toastmasters like 7 or 6 years ago, but I was so scared of joining, right? And then this thing happened, and then you know what? This is the time for me to grow up. And I decided to start so many things that time. So I started writing my blog. I started building my business as a coach because I love teaching pronunciation.
Mm-hmm.
And I, just tried out like so many things around that time. And I shouldn't say that I'm glad that this thing happened,
Mm-hmm.
but I really think that everything happens for a reason. So for me, that was that moment. And that's because I have my own business now. I feel comfortable, being interviewed here now. That's because I took action that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you find that the more that you step out of your comfort zone, that each time it gets a little bit easier because you know that there's going to be something good on the other side?
Yeah, I feel it. Like for example, like giving a speech in front of just 5 people or 7 people and then speaking for 5 minutes was the scariest thing for me. Just 3 years ago, right?
Yeah.
That was just 3 years ago. Now I went on a radio show in Hawaii, local Hawaiian radio show, just 4 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And I was interviewed as a guest of like one of 4 guests in Toastmasters. So I went on just live local Hawaii radio show, and that's the difference I see now. I feel that every time I try something scary, it gets easier later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's
Yeah.
this is exactly the same for me. And also talking about, with initiating, oh, that sounds very familiar to me as well. I love to start things. Love to start things. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Such a thrill with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually an example that you've shared of something that was kind of a difficult situation or a bit of a nightmare that turned into a success. I'm thinking specifically a communication related nightmare or difficulty. Is there something there that you can share with us that we can learn from as well?
Yeah, oh my goodness. Okay, so I learned that emailing can go wrong massively sometimes because I learned that like email, like the sentences don't have your tone, right? So even though you have good intention of writing something, and then you mean to be like helpful, or you're trying to offer something, but it depends on the person who reads it. So the person reads it in a wrong way, it can go wrong. So and then, I speak English as a second language. So my sentences can be not so natural sometimes. So I have to be careful. This is something I learned. So one day I was writing an email to someone who doesn't know Japanese culture, or who doesn't know Japanese language. I put words together to trying to show my good intention and offering some help, and then the person didn't contact me back, and I tried to call him, but he didn't reply my call. So I asked different person, and then I read the sentences out for that person, and then he said, well, you can read it in kind of like a different way. I know you didn't mean to say so, but you can take it this way too. So this is something I learned, like I should call instead of emailing if something very important to discuss. So, but I had this trauma of calling on the phone because for a long time, I couldn't really communicate in English on the phone because you can't see that person, right? And with my Japanese, like thick Japanese accent, especially back then, like when I came to the US, when I wanted to ask someone on the phone, the person couldn't stand my thick Japanese accent because it's not really understandable. And oftentimes I got hung up. So I have this trauma for a long, long time. So I had been avoiding phone calls because of that. But I learned this from this incident that, oh, okay, so emailing can go wrong. I should start calling on the phone instead of emailing, and then I should overcome this trauma. So this is something I'm working on right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's it's the same kind of thing with me. Even, English is my native language, and still I've had experiences where people have misunderstood when I've written an email, even though, communication is my area of expertise. And I've still had in the past, I've had people who've misunderstood what I said because, we have different perspectives, different points of view, and you can't read those things like the body language and tone of voice in an email. So it's very easy for there to be a mistake. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So for you, like you call that person instead of emailing.
Yeah. Well, again, even though I'm a native speaker in English, I'm really not a fan of using the phone. I don't know. So I prefer to meet people in person or talk as we are doing. For people who are listening to the podcast, maybe don't realize, but we're talking through video conferencing on Zoom, so we can see each other, and that to me is definitely the preferable way to communicate because you can read. It's not just the language, but it's the whole body language and the tone of voice as well that makes a big difference.
Oh, I see. So if you cannot meet the person in person, so you do like Zoom conference or something over
That would be my
calling.
Yeah. It's so recently, when my assistant's making appointments, she will always ask the people, are you okay with the Zoom video conference? And if they say no, then we go to phone is like the next option. And I minimize my use of email these days.
Oh, wow. Okay, I will try that. Yeah, I will do the Zoom conference more than just, calling on the phone too.
Yeah, if people are open to it, because for some people it's still very new. The thing is that increasingly people are using it, and they're using it in businesses and in the online entrepreneurial world, as we know, more and more people are using things like Zoom video conferencing. So I feel like I should be getting commission from Zoom because I talk about all the time. So that was your kind of your nightmare, and you've talked a little bit about what you're working on now as well. About speaking more on the phone. What advice or recommendations, resources? What do you have for our listeners or for those who are watching? And let's go with especially around pronunciation for people who have concerns about their pronunciation. What's something that they can start to work on? And if you've got other tips that you want to share, that's fine too. If it's not related to pronunciation, that's good too.
Yeah, so over the years, I found that English vowels are so difficult. So if you're having with some misunderstanding in English, probably vowels are the issues. So like for example, I used to say bunk when I wanted to say bank.
Oh, wow.
So when I say like, yeah, I need to go to the bunk, it's like bunk.
Oh.
Bunk, it's a bed, right? Type of like kind of like a small bed. But at that time, I didn't know. And if you learn English as a second language, vowels are very difficult to acquire. And I didn't know the difference between bunk and bank. And now I know the difference. It's a huge difference. Like you're like guessing what's bunk. And then when I say bank, and oh yeah, right? So if like listeners are having some like misunderstanding with like Americans or English speaking people, then maybe work on vowels, English vowels. So that would be my advice. And work on breathing is very important too. So right now I'm trying to change my breathing from when I speak Japanese, but 日本語を喋るときは、そう声が変わる. So when I speak Japanese and when I speak English, my breathing changes. Because I want to project my voice when I speak English. And then one thing I noticed that English needs to have a very strong voice because there are so many different vowels, and consonants need to be more crisp and clear. So you want to project a voice, but if you try to make your voice stronger, but using Japanese breathing, you can hurt your throat. Right. Because your Japanese throat is very different. So you don't want to hurt your throat. So you want to change the breathing so that you'll be more comfortable to project your voice. So that would be another tip.
And how do people change their breathing?
Yeah, so breathing, it's 日本語はこの辺から。
She's pointing. For those who can't.
Do you feel like around the so around the throat, and then do you know the valve here called velum?
No.
So there is a, when you close your mouth, you can still breathe in and out because there is a valve.
Oh, in the back of the throat?
Yeah, so this thing is called the velum.
Okay.
So when you speak Japanese, the velum is open. So a lot of air escapes from your nose. Therefore, you can speak quietly in Japanese. So it's a good tip for actually English speaking people to improve their Japanese pronunciation. You can open the velum and have air escape from your nose, so you don't have a lot of air from your mouth. So that way you sound more Japanese. So that would be, that would be something, English speaking people can do. And for Japanese to be able to get the strong airflow for English, you want to close the velum and have a lot more air from your mouth. So that's the difference you can do. So I usually teach my clients how to change that, the mechanism.
Wow, that is absolutely fascinating. I love that. My goodness. And what you say makes so much sense as well. When we talk about presenting or speaking with confidence, then I always encourage my clients to breathe more, just, regardless of the velum, as you talk about it, just to get more oxygen into the body, because usually if we're in a situation where we're feeling under pressure, then we become short of breath. That's part of the survival instinct. So getting more oxygen into the body and breathing more helps. And also when you think about it, when you're speaking, it's all out breath, right? You're exhaling the whole time when you're speaking. So you need to get more oxygen into the body.
Yeah, yes. So when I speak Japanese, I hurt my throat a lot. And then what I noticed is that so when we Japanese speak, we hold the air here. So even though we inhale air, the air doesn't go out. So instead of so when you speak Japanese, you want to focus on just breathing out. So that's something that we tend to forget because air stays in the throat.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great tip. So
thank you.
I think that's probably a great segue into telling us more about, you have a webinar coming up, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So so I have I offer like a lot of courses. So this webinar is on December 7th at 12 p.m. in Japan time. I'm doing this with Yumi's English Bootcamp. So Yumi, in case you don't know, she is a very, very famous YouTuber. I'm pretty sure a lot of people know who she is, and she's amazing. She's called like Queen of Pronunciation. So she's like, she knows so much. And then when she visited Hawaii, all we talked about was like pronunciation, English pronunciation. That's how much we love talking about pronunciation. So we decided to do a webinar together, and this is for beginners and intermediate people, and especially people who haven't studied pronunciation. Can get so much out of this webinar, because we're going to focus on how to get out of katakana pronunciation and how you can start being able to just say something and you don't have to repeat anymore. So that's something can be very tired, because when I came to the US, I had very thick Japanese katakana accent, and I had to repeat myself so many times. I didn't like it. So this webinar is for like beginners and intermediate people, and especially if they have to repeat themselves when they something in English, then I recommend that they come to this webinar.
That's great. So when you say beginners and intermediate in terms of their pronunciation, so they may have reasonable English, but it's the pronunciation that they're beginner and intermediate. Is that right?
Well, either way is fine. I think English level doesn't really, it doesn't really matter.
Okay. Any level.
So any level.
It's just
yes.
wanting to really, it's for people who haven't had specific pronunciation training.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
I guess that's a lot of people, because very often, in the Japanese education system, it's focused on the English language without all of the rest of the communication that goes with it. This is why I always talk about, well, what about the body language? What about the tone of voice? What about all of the other parts of, thinking about your audience, being open to other people's thinking? That doesn't get taught as part of the whole communication package. It's just the focus on the language itself, which is only a small part.
So I didn't really learn pronunciation when I was in Japan. So it's learnable. It's totally learnable. So I hope a lot of people realize that they can improve their pronunciation at any level, at any age.
Definitely. And, and I've gone through this for myself, as I said just a little bit at the beginning, where I grew up in the UK, I had a very strong accent. And when I went to university, which was in a different area, people couldn't understand me quite a lot at the beginning. So even where I'm originally from, we don't pronounce the H at the beginning of a word. So I would say, people ask me my name, I'd say, I'm Ellen. In my mind, I could hear the H because I knew it had an H, but people didn't know if my name was Ellen, Ellen, or Helen, Helen.
So if you think about it, in Japan too, Japanese has like different dialects too, right? Yeah. So even like when you speak Japanese, you want to train your Japanese too as a Japanese native Japanese speaker. So why not? When you learn English, just learn pronunciation. So communication will become easy.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you want to make it easy for other people to understand you.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So this is brilliant. Lots of food for thought for everybody. Anything else that you'd like to share with our listeners or those who are watching the video version?
Well, let's see. I think I've said many things, but one thing though, I just kind of mentioned that anyone can improve their pronunciation at any age, because I've experienced it. I came to the US when I was 23 and had a very thick Japanese accent back then. So just don't give up if you are having a hard time with just English communication because you have to repeat yourself so many times or something. Don't give up, because if you learn the basics, you will understand it. And just wanted to encourage other people out there. I just wanted to say that, they can improve anytime, at any level, at any age.
That is so great. And yeah, whenever I have a client who has pronunciation concerns, I'm always referring people to Aiko, and quite a few people in my community have also taken your classes and said great things about it. So I'm sure that people will enjoy the webinar on December 7th, and we'll put a link with the show notes so that you can go and sign up for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Aiko. Great talking with you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Helen.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.